Imagine building the biggest store on earth, becoming so powerful your name crowns the tallest tower in the world, and then, somehow, ending up as a ghost in an empty mall. That was Sears. For more than a century, Sears wasn't just a retailer, it was America's store. It dressed the country, furnished its homes, filled its toolboxes, insured its cars, and even helped define the way Americans learned to shop. Long before there was Amazon, long before there was Walmart on every highway, Sears had already figured out how to bring the entire marketplace to ordinary people. And that's what makes its disappearance feel so eerie. Because if a company this big, this trusted, this deeply woven into American life could collapse, then maybe no empire lasts forever. Smithsonian NBC News Britannica. To understand why Sears mattered, you have to go back to an America that feels almost unrecognizable now. The story began in the 1880s, when Richard Sears, a railroad station agent in Minnesota, started selling watches on the side. He teamed up with watchmaker Alva Roebuck, and what began as a simple mail-order watch business soon exploded into something much bigger. At a time when much of rural America was isolated, with limited access to city stores, and often at the mercy of overpriced local shopkeepers, Sears arrived like a miracle in the mailbox. Its catalogs were thick, sprawling worlds of possibility, pages packed with watches, clothing, stoves, bicycles, tools, toys, and eventually almost anything a family could imagine needing. The language was warm, confident, and personal. Sears didn't just sell products. It taught people how to order, how to compare, how to dream. For millions of Americans, especially in small towns and on farms, the Sears catalog was the internet before the internet existed. It wasn't just shopping, it was access. Smithsonian History, NBC News, and the scale of it was almost hard to comprehend. In 1906, Sears opened a gigantic Chicago mail-order plant covering roughly 3 million square feet. So vast it was described at the time as the largest business building in the world. This was not some sleepy, old-fashioned company stumbling through the industrial age. Sears was a machine, precise, ambitious, and obsessed with logistics. Orders moved through belts, chutes, bins, and timed systems that let the company process staggering volumes of merchandise. A century before people became obsessed with two-day shipping, Sears was already engineering speed and reliability into the customer experience. The company thrived because it understood something profound about America. People didn't just want low prices. They wanted dignity, choice, and the feeling that the modern world had finally reached them. For families who had never seen a big city department store, the Sears catalog felt almost magical. Children flipped through its pages like it was a treasure map. Parents used it to stretch precious dollars. Some homes kept it near the family Bible. It became part of domestic life, part reference book, part wish machine, part proof that abundance was possible. Smithsonian New York Times, NBC News. Then Sears did something even more remarkable. It escaped the fate that kills so many giants. It adapted. As America urbanized and the automobile began to change everyday life, Sears realized the future would not belong to mail order alone. In 1925, it opened its first department store in Chicago. It was a turning point. Suddenly, the catalog had come to life. Customers could walk into a physical space and touch the products they had once only seen on paper. That move proved brilliant. By the end of the 1920s, Sears had hundreds of stores, and even through the Great Depression, it kept growing by leaning into practicality and thrift. Sears wasn't built on glamour. It sold dependable things people genuinely needed: socks, sheets, tools, appliances, work clothes. In a country battered by uncertainty, that made Sears feel trustworthy. After World War II, as suburbs spread and shopping centers multiplied, Sears followed the American family outward. By the mid-1950s, the chain had more than 700 stores, often anchoring the new malls that defined post-war life. To countless families, a trip to Sears was a ritual. You went there for school clothes, for a lawnmower, for a washing machine, for a set of craftsman tools that promised permanence in an increasingly disposable world. Smithsonian, NBC News. At its peak, Sears felt less like a store and more like an empire. It launched brands that became American institutions in their own right. Allstate began inside Sears in 1931 as a mail-order insurance business before moving into Sears stores themselves. Decades later, Sears would help launch Discover Card through its financial services empire. Think about what that means. Sears wasn't just selling hammers and refrigerators. It was selling insurance, financial products, and an entire vision of middle-class American life under one corporate umbrella. By 1969, Sears was the largest retailer in the world, employing around 350,000 people. So immense was its confidence that it commissioned a skyscraper to consolidate its operations in Chicago. When the Sears Tower opened in 1973, it became the tallest building on Earth. That image matters. A company so dominant that it literally stamped its name on the skyline of America's great inland capital. For years, even after the name changed, people still called it Sears Tower, because that was how deeply the brand had embedded itself into memory. Sears seemed immovable, like a mountain of glass and steel. Britannica, Allstate, Discover, Smithsonian. But empires usually don't collapse in one dramatic moment. They weaken slowly, while still looking invincible from the outside. For Sears, the first real tremors came in the 1970s. America was changing again, and this time the old instincts that had once made Sears brilliant began to dull. Discount chains like Walmart, Target, and Kmart started pulling away value-conscious shoppers with lower prices and simpler operations. At the same time, more affluent customers drifted toward specialized department stores and niche retailers. The middle ground Sears had dominated for generations began to shrink beneath its feet, and instead of sharpening its identity, Sears blurred it. It expanded into finance, insurance, real estate, and banking, becoming a sprawling corporate machine that was increasingly less sure of what it actually was. Even former leaders would later admit that Sears had diversified too much and lost focus. It kept trying to be everything at once: hardware store, fashion destination, financial supermarket, mall anchor, legacy brand, while rivals were becoming ruthlessly clear about who they served and why. In 1991, Walmart overtook Sears as America's largest retailer. That should have sounded every alarm in the building. But by then, the drift had been going on for years. Smithsonian, CNBC. Then came one of the most symbolic moments in the entire story: the death of the catalog. In 1993, Sears announced it was ending its famous Big Book catalog and cutting tens of thousands of jobs. Financially, executives argued the operation had been losing money for years. Strategically, they said the company had to become leaner and more modern. But culturally, it felt like something far bigger had died. This wasn't just a business decision. It was Sears cutting away the very thing that had made it legendary. For nearly a century, that catalog had connected farms to factories, children to Christmas dreams, and ordinary households to the fantasy of endless American abundance. It had helped build the company's identity, and now Sears was burying it. There was a certain cold logic to the move, but it also revealed a deeper problem. Sears no longer seemed to understand what people loved about Sears. It knew how to calculate losses, but it was losing the emotional thread. The company that had once taught America how to shop was now severing its bond with the generations who had grown up waiting for that thick book to land on the doorstep. Nostalgia alone couldn't save a business, of course. But once a brand stops understanding its own soul, the decline gets harder to reverse. New York Times, Smithsonian history. And yet even then, Sears still had a chance. It still had famous brands. It still had real estate. It still had name recognition that most companies would kill for. But the next twist in the story made things worse, not better. In 2005, Sears merged with Kmart in a deal engineered by hedge fund manager Eddie Lampert. On paper, it looked like a bold rescue, a way to combine two struggling retail giants and cut costs into a new future. In reality, many saw it as one fading chain being strapped to another. Instead of renewal, the merger accelerated confusion. Sears became less like a beloved retailer and more like a financial puzzle. Valuable assets were sold, real estate was spun off, brands were shed, Costs were slashed. But while competitors were reinvesting in stores, customer experience, and new ideas, Sears seemed to be shrinking itself into survival. Analysts and former employees would later say the company was being run more like a hedge fund than a store. And retail is unforgiving that way. Customers can sense when a place is no longer loved by the people in charge. They feel it in the lighting, in the silence, in the lack of newness, in the sense that nobody is really steering the ship anymore. CNBC, Reuters, NBC News. By the 2010s, the unraveling had become visible to anyone who walked through the doors. Reuters described loyal shoppers driving past their local Sears because the shelves were poorly stocked, the stores felt neglected, and there was often no one around to help. Former employees remembered a time when customer service had mattered, when you could check out in different departments and always find someone nearby. That culture, they said, had vanished. The stores themselves began to feel haunted. Empty aisles, dim corners, scattered merchandise. Fewer workers, less traffic, less energy, less reason to come back. This was the strange final act of Sears, not a sudden explosion, but a slow draining away of life. Meanwhile, the wider retail world kept evolving. Walmart mastered scale. Home Depot dominated home improvement. Best Buy sharpened electronics. Amazon became the new everything store. Ironically, Sears had once been called the Amazon of its time, yet it failed to defend the very territory it had invented. In 2018, after years of mounting losses and asset sales, Sears filed for bankruptcy. For many Americans, the news felt both shocking and inevitable. Shocking because Sears had once seemed eternal. Inevitable because by then, so many stores already felt like ruins waiting for the sign to come down. Reuters, NBC News, CNBC. What makes the fall of Sears so haunting isn't just that a company went bankrupt. Plenty of companies do. It's that Sears once felt like a permanent feature of American life. It sold the tools that built garages, the appliances that filled kitchens, the clothes kids wore on the first day of school. It sat at the center of small-town imagination and suburban routine. Its catalogs sparked wonder. Its stores anchored malls. Its tower ruled the skyline. And then, little by little, the country moved on. New habits formed. New giants rose. Sears, which had been brilliant at adapting once, stopped adapting well enough. It lost focus, lost investment, lost the magic of its own identity, and by the time it tried to recover, the emotional bond had frayed and the competition had already eaten the future. Maybe that's why abandoned Sears buildings feel so powerful when you see them now. They aren't just empty stores. They're monuments to a version of America that believed size meant safety, that trusted familiar brands forever, that assumed the giants of one generation would still be standing in the next. Sears reminds us that even the most unstoppable institutions can fade into nostalgia. And maybe the most unsettling part is this. While it was happening, almost nobody believed it could really happen at all. Smithsonian Britannica Reuters.